Hey guys, Jeremy James, the Bourbon Realtor.
Lahannah
And we've got Adam Edwards. We're chasing Alice and that little white rabbit down the rabbit hole on this week's show.
Hey guys, welcome back to Barstools Bourbon. We are in Louisville today at Hole Distillery, and honestly, I expected it to be beautiful, but this place has kind of blown me away. It is gorgeous up here.
This is whole 007, James Bond swanky level. Like, if I win the Powerball, this is what my penthouse is going to look like.
Is it like your secret lair?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I'm just going to have a distillery in the background, and this is what I'm going to be looking at 100% because this is off the chain.
It's cool. It's well thought out, like every detail about it. Adam, you want to tell us a little bit about Rabbit Hole, what you do here, yourself?
Absolutely.
All kinds of things.
Definitely. So my name is Adam Edwards, and I'm the digital brand ambassador for Rabbit Hole Distillery. I've been working for Rabbit Hole since basically we opened.
Nice.
We opened in 2018 to the public. I started kind of working the tour department and very quickly found out how much I loved bourbon and Rabbit Hole. I'm from Louisville, so of course I love bourbon already. But I've always wanted to be an ambassador for a distillery, and they kind of made it happen for me.
Dreams came true.
Well, you guys are basically owning the whole TikTok space for bourbon TikTok. It's crazy because that's how we actually got connected was through TikTok. And I know a lot of folks think that TikTok is just 15-year-old girls dancing and doing little whatever
TikTok
dances or whatever. And somebody's going to clip that right now, and I'm going to pay for that.
That's the soundbite.
Yeah, that's going to be it. And I came across Michael's stuff and then your official stuff for the distillery, and I'm like, you guys are owning the space. Nobody else is there. And the thing is, the bourbon TikTok group is growing by leaps and bounds. We're finding influencers on there like all over the place, and it's every day we're seeing more and more and more.
But when you have a space like this to create the content, it just makes sense to just do it.
Visually, this place is absolutely gorgeous. We're going to roll some B-roll footage. You guys can see all that. Absolutely gorgeous. The view out the windows.
Yeah.
That's
why we call it Overlook. It overlooks the distillery, but of course it overlooks the city of Louisville.
Well, I always say one of my favorite bars I've ever been to. I'm a huge New York City fan. And I think it's 64, 68. I'm bad with math. We just talked about that. But it's this rooftop bar. And it's just so cool. Like, you look around, the Empire State Building is directly behind your head. And to me, I was like, I've never felt so cool as to be standing here. But honestly, Rabbit Hole gives me that same type of feel. The aesthetic here is mind-blowing. I love it.
Right downtown Louisville. We're looking out at the whole skyline. This is what you see. I've got the Galt House, whatever.
Got the Omni and the Providian. You can actually see other distilleries from here. You can see Indiana. You can see Vendome. That tower right there. That's Vendome.
Oh, is
hey,
it?
I actually live in Southern Indiana.
Hey, the Mississippi's pretty big, but that Ohio's wide. Let me tell you that.
To tell me we got a good view of Louisville at least.
That's right. You guys have the best view of Louisville. That's the problem.
But yeah, this space, it's incredibly comfortable. That's the whole point, right? Is to come up here and have a great. It is a cocktail bar. When we're open, which has been about a year since we've been open to the public.
So sad.
I know, and so we're very much ready to get not only Overlook open, but the distillery open to the public. So we're really looking.
So you guys are actually a functioning cocktail bar, not just come in, do the tour, take a tasting. Yeah. It's so just full on functional.
Oh, I would spend hours here.
The best old fashioned in the city happens in this bar.
Oh, now that's a gauntlet. That is a gauntlet you just threw down. Because I'm
best
telling
old fashioned
you,
in the city in this bar right here.
There's a guy over at 21C, and I'll put his up against anybody. So that's a challenge. I'll take you up on any day because that's my jam right there.
All right,
all right.
Do you want to tell us a little bit? You all have 4 different whiskeys, and this is gin.
That is a gin, absolutely, yeah. So we've got 2 bourbons. We've got a rye whiskey. We've got a bourbon finished in sherry casks, and of course we've got that gin that is finished in the rye barrels.
Nice.
So
I didn't know that.
So good florals with some
maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Right.
I always like to tell people you're going to be pleasantly surprised.
All right.
I'm a huge gin drinker too.
I never was until I started drinking this one. So it's amazing. It turned me into a gin drinker.
So what was it? Wilderness Trail did the Bourbon Drinkers vodka with Blue Heron. So is this going to be our?
This is like the Bourbon Drinkers gin. That's why we call it bespoke, because it is bespoke, tailor-made for the industry.
There we go.
Right.
There we go. You heard it here. All right.
So,
You want to go ahead and get
Y'all wanna
started?
dive
Yeah, I'm
in?
going to let you walk us through because this is
Definitely.
your I mean, well, it's our show, but it's your show.
This is your show,
This is my
Adam.
corner of your show.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
There we go. So yeah, we'll just start. I guess
We'll
we're
start from the right.
going
From
from
the
the
right?
All right, and I'll tell you what, we're going to do something that's really special to me first. I feel like we're about to get pretty nerdy with this.
Oh, yeah.
And I know if you're drinking along with us, you can get nerdy with us. That's totally fine with me. But before we really dive into this, I feel like you can learn a lot about somebody if you ask them, I don't know, what they do for a living or where they went to high school or what their favorite animal is, but you don't really know somebody until you've had that first drink with them.
Mhm.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Good eye contact, right, Jess? Eye contact
Right.
on
Cheers.
the clink. On the clink.
And
On the clink, but we're
give
not
one
talking-
back to the bar.
My eyes are closed right now because we know Jess's reasoning. Eyes are closed.
If,
That's a story when we're off of live. Can I open my eyes,
so
Jess?
if you wonder why you have to have good eye
No.
contact on your clink, see the Frey Ranch show. We reveal all.
Well,
Trust me,
cheers,
it's
everybody.
important.
Cheers.
Oh, that nose is nice.
All right. So this is Cave Hill. This is the OG. This is the one that Cave started with. This is a 4-grain bourbon, and it's unlike any other 4-grain out there. So 4 grains typically are wheat and rye, and then some malted barley, along with corn, of course, being the predominant grain. That's very monotonous. You know, that's something that Cave, when he started Rabbit Hole and he started distilling,
I'm gonna check.
he didn't want to be white noise, right? He didn't want to do things like everyone else. So what he chose to do is kind of fall back on his Scotch background. He was a Scotch drinker before
Right.
he was a bourbon drinker.
Right, was won over to bourbon, right?
Exactly. Heather actually showed him. She was the Kentucky influence. He was a psychologist for 20 years, and they moved down here, and he fell in love with Louisville and Kentucky and the industry. Cave Hill, of course, is talking about all the distillers before us,
Yeah.
right? That really references all the distillers before us, kind of the shoulders of the giants that we're standing on. This one is 70% corn, and then 10% each of malted wheat, malted barley, and honey malted barley. But you really can't call this a wheated bourbon. I mean, you can call it beer if you want, but I don't, because the malted barley and the honey malted barley, those are the flavoring grains. That is really the secondary grain of Cave Hill, and that's why it's like on the nose, just honey for days.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that y'all are rolling at 70% corn.
Absolutely.
That's a little higher than what we normally see.
It really is. And, a lot of these mash bills kind of came from that history that Cave was so interested in. If you look before Prohibition, there was like 2,000 distilleries in Kentucky.
Right.
After Prohibition, that number fell to 13. And then today we're only at, like 60?
Yeah.
Something like that. We're not even
Still
close to
low.
where we were. So when all of those distilleries closed, a lot of the distilleries that were able to keep going through Prohibition, they bought up a lot of those mash bills, sold through them, and then just focused on 2 or 3. That's why everything went to either wheat or rye as their secondary grain. Just financially, that makes sense for a distillery to do that. They're not going to sit there and make 30 different mash bills, right?
Right.
But what that does is, almost 100 years later, that leaves open the door for other distilleries now in modern times to come in and start to go back to the roots. And so you start looking at pre-Prohibition mash bills, heavy corn or heavy rye. But why not use both, right? Why not use malted grains? Like lots of malt. Get heavy on the malt, too. I mean, that's 30% malt in there.
I thought it was cool while you were walking us through talking about your all's rye. Like, you said one comes from Canada, the other one, did you say Germany?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the High Gold, whereas Cave Hill, no rye at all, but it still has quite a bit of spice on it.
It does still have that spice mid-palate.
That's the barrels. And in fact, you were kind of looking at the label.
Yeah.
Not only do we put the mash bill, we shout out our cooperage. We shout out Kelvin Cooper.
Right.
That's awesome.
And we were talking about Kelvin downstairs, right? I mean, they're toasting and charring the barrels. They're using oak fires instead of gas. Like, they're really doing some unique things. What that toasting and charring does, especially the toasting, not only is it going to bring out the sweetness of the barrel, it also brings out a lot of the spice. More lignans are getting kind of pulled out on the inside of that stave towards the inside there, right? Towards the inside of that barrel. So the bourbon's going to really interact with that. Now, let's go to High Gold.
Oh, do we?
Okay.
Because
we'll come back. Don't worry.
Tasting note on this, it's like butter,
Mhm.
and then you had a little bit of honey sweetness, and then for me it was just cinnamon right over
Yes.
the back part of the
Yeah,
palate.
like the
Like, that
bacon
was
spices
really
shine
Exactly.
so forward. You're saying that's coming from the barrel?
Absolutely. So like cinnamon, allspice, clove, even like where it's like numbing just a little bit, like definitely barrel notes. And then the honey malted barley, that's the honey kind of on the finish too. For
Right.
me, it's like spicy up front, almost like green apple in the middle.
Yep.
We don't do any chill filtering here, so a lot of those esters are making it through, giving you
Nice.
like citrus or like green note
A
flavors.
little bit of mint kind of back in
Exactly.
there. Yep.
Absolutely mint
Yep.
on there. And then the finish, lots of like vanilla, custard, and honey. So it starts spicy and then ends sweet, and that's balanced, right?
It's a very it's like a lingering finish, but it's not anything. It's not a major Kentucky hog. It's
and for 95
well-balanced.
proof, right? I mean, it balances that line
I feel like
between
it
90
almost
and 100
drinks
well.
slightly closer to like a bottled and bond at 100 proof, but it's wonderful.
And that's the reason we chose 95 because, you know, if you want to make a cocktail, it's like 100 proof, right? Which you want to make cocktails with. Or if you want to sip it, it's like a 90 proof. Yeah. So that's why it straddles those lines.
We're a little bit of proof snobs here.
Yeah,
so
that's okay.
You could just start pouring the barrel, and we'll just.
I don't know if I'm allowed to, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when we leave.
How much red tape do we have to go through to get there?
Just one Glencairn under there. There we
just
go.
One measly Glencairn
with a straw.
So High Gold, also a bourbon.
So this is Blue Label.
This is the Blue Label, and this, you know, we were kind of talking about this when you all got here, right? We do two different bourbons, and I think the reason that we like doing this with Rabbit Hole is the normal consumer, just your average bourbon consumer, is not really used to seeing, you know, the same name on two different bottles of bourbon. They see that and they're like, what's the difference? It's all bourbon.
Right.
So think of it this like wine, right? You can go into a restaurant and get a steak and get a red wine, and it's going to work. Or you can go into a really nice restaurant and you can order your filet mignon, ribeye. You can get the filet, you can get the strip, whatever, right? But then you're going to have a sommelier come over. And then you're like, oh, I see that you got the pepper-crusted filet mignon. I think that you're going to need a South American cap. Or I see that you got, you know, the mint jelly lamb. Let's go with the Pinot Noir, right?
Nice
different
Italian
red wines
blend.
they're going to act different, right? Why not have two bourbons that can do the same thing?
Sure.
So you switch everything. You switch nothing, right, except the grain. So barrels stay the same. The proof is the same. Char on the barrel is the same. Everything's level 3 here. Non-chill filtering, 70% corn, but then 25% malted rye from Germany. This is that German rye, and it's malted at 5% malted barley. And this one, it's almost exactly opposite.
Yeah.
Right? The nose on this one is so much sweeter.
Yes. Almost like toasted coconut. That's what I get, is like lots of toasty notes. But this one, it starts sweet, and then it gets spicy. Like the Kentucky hug on this one is definitely cinnamon to me.
And there is so much herbalness going up on the front of my tongue right now. It's got a nice prickle going on with it. I like it. Now, for me, we did the first TikTok I did. One of the first TikToks we threw out there was the 3.
Oh yeah.
And when I did my tasting, then that Cave Hill, I can't help it.
It's complex. It's a complex pour.
Yeah.
I fell in love with that Cave Hill.
This one's 95 proof as well?
This is also 95 proof.
Wow.
And I feel like this one, High Gold, is a little more nuanced, right? So Cave Hill's like the Cabernet. It's big, you know, savory, meaty dishes, right? Yeah. This one, for me, be a little more nuanced, right? So fish tacos, chicken chili, things like that. Things have a little more nuanced flavor to them. This is great with.
Almost like a Chardonnay
here
type
acting
level.
like I don't drink whiskey while sitting on the boat. I'm like, I'm awake. Like, listen, we can be snow tubing. There's probably whiskey in my pocket. I don't need fish tacos, Adam.
Yeah,
let's get bougie. Let's get bougie. Okay?
But I see what you're saying. They're very much more like a Cabernet or a Merlot type of a profile on the Cave Hill. Almost a Chardonnay type of a setup on the High Gold.
Yeah.
Where it's
a little bit more nuanced, right?
A little brighter flavor.
Exactly. This is, you know, instead of like green apple on this is like citrus. It's like orange peel and lemon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
Zest.
Like right in the mid palate too.
Yep.
Like right in the mid palate. Kind of
on that nose, I'm getting like orange zest. I'm the chef in my house, and when you just take a little bit of that zest off, that spritz, or when you what is it? You twist the orange.
The express.
Expressing
it,
over a cocktail or whatever, you just get that pop of that citrus.
And High Gold is named after Christian High Gold, who was a German immigrant to the city of Louisville in the 19th century, and he was a stonemason. And he built High Gold House, which the facade still stands. And even though he was a German immigrant, he really embraced that idea of, like, you know, patriotism, American patriotism. So the house he built, he carved, you know, James Buchanan's bust, like scenes of George Washington. That's why we wanted to really, you know, dedicate a bottle to the huge Louisville figure. This is Christian High Gold.
Love it. Man, that's for 95. That thing just hangs,
and it's a high rye, but it doesn't really. I feel like Cave Hill almost has a little more spice overall.
I think that Cave Hill had more spice.
Yeah, you do those blind, you might get confused which one's which.
We talk about it like our palates. We found a lot of similarities, but he leans more towards like the wheaters.
I'm on the bourbon.
I lean towards the ryes, and so to me, I feel like I would go to Cave Hill.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Cave Hill is not the rye.
Exactly. And it's
That's so
I'm going to say
funny.
something that's going to make like the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I hate this phrase, but it
gosh.
kind of works.
Okay, let's go.
Subverting expectations. It's a very marketing phrase, but it kind of works, especially since you put the mash bill on the label. You read that mash bill and you're like, oh, no rye.
Right.
It's going to have no spice. And then
Right.
you taste it and now we've kind of forced you to experience
Absolutely.
that.
If I were
Well,
a liquor
and like
store,
you said-
I would have absolutely
Right.
went for the high gold instead of the Cave Hill. But now that I'm tasting them side by side, I would take that one.
There you go.
That the Cave Hill just has that, and you said the word. And that's what I'm looking for in a bourbon most times is savory.
Yes.
And I missed it when we were doing the 4 grain for Frey Ranch. I was trying to figure out the word, and it didn't come to me until I was doing the editing. I was like, "That's it. It's that savory factor that's in there. Not just a sweet butterscotch, but there is that salt and pepper crusted steak savoriness where you've got some sweet, some mellow, some sharp.
Well, you've got to have
All
the
of it.
balance.
Yeah,
It's
awesome.
huge to have the balance. You've got to have balance because if it's all sweet, it's boring.
Right.
If it's
It's a
all
can.
savory, it's boring. If it's
Right.
all spicy, it's boring. A little bit of everything in there really helps kind of
Now I'm
inform the rest of the
going to
palate.
throw out a word. A little bit of umami going on.
Man, I was thinking umami.
Umami. That's
Ribeyes
where it's
and
at.
umamis.
Umami. I mean, that's umami. I know it's Japanese, but that's exactly what it means.
Yep.
You take a bite of something, you go, ooh,
What is
umami.
that? You can't put your finger on it. A little
It's
earthy.
just
Yeah.
all of that going. Yes,
Oh,
indeed.
man.